Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I have been so looking forward to this conversation. Garry Ridge led WD-40 to unprecedented growth, which is amazing. But more importantly, the reason he's one of my heroes is he has created a company where everybody loves coming to work every day. And that should be the aspiration for every senior living organization out there. Before we get into the conversation, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So as I was getting ready for this show and researching you, one of the things that really jumped out to me was that you grew WD-40 from a $100 million company to a $3.5 billion market company. And yet, when I look at the content that you put out and the things you talked about, that doesn't seem like that's very important to you. Is that fair?
The growth is not important. Well, the growth the growth was the outcome of having the pleasure and privilege of building an organization where people went to work every day. They made a contribution to something bigger than themselves. They learned something new. They were protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and they went home happy. And the reason that's important is happy people build happy families build happy communities build a happy world. And Steve, you'll agree with me, a little happier world would be a pretty good thing.
No question about that. No question about that. So you had these early jobs of, let me see, milk truck and a paper route, a DJ where you say you had a big afro.
Yeah, I did.
I wish we had a picture of that. I got to tell you, I would love to see that. What lifelong lessons did you learn from those early work experiences?
I think number one, and in any organization, no matter what you do, people need to know and feel like they belong. One of the biggest desires we have as human beings is to belong. The second one is, does your work matter? And are you being recognized for the work you do? And, when I was delivering papers as a young lad, and I delivered to a lady who was well into her 80s, living in a house, and I was probably the connection to her in the world. And I'll never forget how, she appreciated that. So do I belong? Do I matter? One of the other things that I learned was, we're not supposed to be managers, we're coaches. So, I was coached by great people in retailing on how to do things better and whatever. And then, finally, what's really important is, are we safe? Are we creating an atmosphere, a company where there's psychological safety? And to do that, we have to be open to learning. And that's where the birth of the learning moment came, which is, the recognition of a positive or negative outcome of any situation.
Good. I think that those early lessons can be so valuable. You talk a lot about how in your sort of early learning journey, you learn on Sunday and do on Monday. And I really like this. And yet what I find myself thinking is that people are doing plenty of learning and very little doing. Do you see that? And how do we get more doing? Maybe we even need less learning and more doing.
Well, I think in a lot of circumstances, people are afraid to try. And that's why I think, creating a psychological safety or an environment in an organization where we truly do realize that not everything that we do is going to work. And, if you think about WD-40 company, the brand itself or the product itself was the result of many learnings. Back in 1953, the company was called Rocket Chemical Company, based in San Diego. And there was a problem with condensation and corrosion in the umbilical cord of the Atlas space rocket. And the chemists got together and started to mix up solutions to solve the problem. And Formula One didn't work, 10 didn't work, 15 didn't work, 25 didn't work, 30 didn't work, 35 didn't work, 39 didn't work, but guess what? 40 did. So that's why it's called WD, water displacement 40th formula. So it was the effort of learning and putting it to work. If they'd stopped trying to improve the formula, we wouldn't be having a chat today.
I love that. Okay, let's get to your new book. Any dumbass can do it. I love the topic, the title. It sounds like some of the kind of thing that I might write. And yet I find it to be either the most humble thing a successful CEO can think to do, or the most arrogant thing that a CEO can write. Because you're saying, look at that. I'm this guy who started out in this humble thing. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. And yet, I'm going to look at my senior living industry, and we've got a couple of companies I look at where they have really great workplace cultures, but most of them are pretty mediocre. Some of them are pretty bad. So we continue to struggle, and we're in a business where you should have purpose every day. You go to work, you take care of older people, they smile, you have conversations, amazing things, and turnover and recruitment and burnout are massive, massive problems. So here's my question: as in the 3 years since you've stepped down as CEO of WD-40, and you've been talking to people, have you discovered that not any dumbass can really do it?
No, I haven't really. I mean, let me first talk about the book title. A lot of
Okay.
people might be wondering, why is it called Any Dumbass? And ASS in Australia does not mean someone's posterior or bottom. In fact, the whole theme behind it is about a donkey. And let me share why that's important. People think that donkeys get a bad rap, that they're just stubborn or slow. But here's the truth. Donkeys are steady. They keep going long after others give up. They're loyal companions. You can count on them when the road gets rough. They're practical, not flashy. They know how to conserve energy and get the job done. And while they might not always rush into things, that caution often keeps them safe. So when I say any dumbass can do it, what I really mean is this. You don't have to be brilliant to be a great leader. You just need a bit of courage, a lot of care, and the humility to keep learning. Because like the donkey, leadership isn't about showing off. It's about carrying the load, sticking with the journey, and helping others get to where they need to go. So in answering your question, I think any dumbass can do it if they think of it as the job of carrying the load, sticking with the journey, and helping others get where they need to go.
So you talk about this sort of aha or light bulb moment flying on a Qantas 747, reading the Dalai Lama, where he says our purpose in life is to make people happy. Um, how did you get there? And talk a little bit about that transformation and what you did with that.
Yeah, so I actually read two things. The second thing I read was a quote from Aristotle that said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. And when I think about happiness, happiness is also about being fulfilled. So these two things were swimming around in my brain. And I got back to San Diego and I read about a master's degree in leadership at the University of San Diego. And it was put together by the person who became my mentor, Dr. Ken Blanchard, and the university. So I went to a information session, and Ken Blanchard said most leadership programs only consider getting people in the head. We got to start getting people in the heart. And how true is that? So here I am, 2 years CEO of a US public company. I enrolled in a master's degree in leadership and I went back to school. And for the next 2 years, I learned the attributes and the power of servant leadership. And that's what we used to learn on Sunday and I used to implement on Monday.
And did that mostly work out okay, or did you ever have times where you went and implemented something and you go, a week later or a day later, oh my God, why did I do that?
Well, I think some things work better than others. And also, in the early stages, as we were trying new things, I used to get feedback like, hey, Ridge is drinking too much of Ken Blanchard's Kool-Aid. What is this servant leadership thing all about? So I had to, battle a little bit of that over time. But, I think when I was in that program, I was one of the first or second days in the class, and there was about 30 of us in this cohort, and we were, I would guess, somewhat seasoned, quote unquote, managers and leaders. Someone said, "Why are you here? You're already CEO of a US public company. Haven't you made it?" I said, "Actually, I've come to confirm what I think I know and learn what I don't know because I want to survive. And I know I can't do it on my own." And that was the power of it.
Oh man, I love that so much. So you have in your book a chapter that's titled, let me make sure I get this right, Even a Queen Bee Sits Down to Pee.
Now, even the queen sits
Or we
down to
even the
pee.
even the queen sits down to pee. I don't know where I put that bee thing came in there. Maybe it's my wife's Halloween costume for today. So even the queen sits down to pee. Um, it's both irreverent and profound. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, Steve, as I think I may have shared with you before, my mum lived till she was 99 years and 9 months old. She was 3 months away from getting to 100, which means, being an Australian, she would have got a letter from Queen Elizabeth at the time. But one of the things that Mum really was really great about was, you don't get too big for your boots. People are people. Treat them right. Understand the value. And I used to fly down and visit Mum, as she went through her 90s, and she used to sit me down and give me unconditional love, even at 95 years old. Um, I remember I'd arrive at our family home, and the front door would fling open and Mum would say, "Where the hell have you been, Garry? You're late." Which is exactly what she used to say to me when I was 18 years old, coming home from partying with my mates. But, she'd always have breakfast ready or a cup of tea ready. And then she'd sit down and she'd say, "Now, Garry, there's a few things I need to tell you and talk to you about." And this was unconditional love that Mum used to give me. And it was really powerful, which taught me that, it's really about, understanding that you may not be that big deal that you people think you are. You're just human, and you should respect that.
So I like that a lot. So you talk a lot about this concept of coaching rather than managing. And part of that, as I understand it from the things I've read, is allowing people room to fail. And so I look, but then I step back and I look at the senior living industry, and I know the response from some leaders is going to be, we can't afford to fail. This is people's lives. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, the whole concept of the learning moment is not a get out of jail card. There are certain things that are excluded, around competency, excellence, ethical, behaviors. But, there are other things that happen within organizations that we need to know about. I believe most people don't lie in organizations. I believe they hide and they fake. So do we want in the senior living industry people hiding or faking around issues that, if they felt comfortable bringing them up, we might save more lives, we might protect more people. So I think it's really creating that atmosphere of, it's okay if I share, hey, we tried this and it didn't quite work, and here's a way we might do it better. So it's really about opening up that conversation so people don't fake and hide, because there are people in the organization right now who are faking and hiding because they're because of fear of the response of the leader.
Yeah, so the bad behavior is really still happening. It's just you don't know about it.
Exactly, because they're afraid that if they bring it up, they're going to get quote unquote punished for actually delivering on information that may well be very, very valuable to the organization.
Yep. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So, my audience is a mix of C-suite people and other leaders down the food chain, down the organizational chart is probably a better way than calling it food chain, in the senior living industry. And so assume that I am a mid-level leader, manager, maybe a regional, or maybe I'm actually running a building where I've got two layers of people I'm responding to. And I know my organization is not great. But if I tell you were to take a look at your principles, what is something that I could do to impact the people I lead that would have a big impact and wouldn't likely get me in trouble?
Well, be vulnerable and open, be honest with them. Um, show them that they belong, show them that the work they do that matters, and be a coach. And here's the great thing about being a great coach. A great coach is committed to helping those they have the privilege to lead get an A. I wrote a book with Dr. Ken Blanchard called Helping People Win at Work. And the byline was, I'm not here to mark your paper, I'm here to help you get an A. So does that manager at that level, and firstly, throw the word manager out. You don't manage people, you manage inventory, become a coach. A great coach is brave. They don't protect their own comfort zone at the expense of other people's growth, which means that they're willing to redirect play. They know the game and they know what it takes to win. They don't run onto the field and take the ball. That's called micromanaging. A lot of leaders tend to want to micromanage. That will exhaust the leader. What we need to do is to be the teacher to help the player play the best game. They spend a lot of time on the sideline watching the play. They add value to the player with feedback on how to improve their game. They never, ever, ever go to the podium and pick up the prize. And a lot of bad leaders do that. And more importantly, they do what I call spending a lot of time in the stinky locker room, which means they're alongside the person. I think I've introduced you would have read about this person in the book. This is Alec or Alice, the soul-sucking CEO of Fear Incorporated. And he doesn't spend time in the stinky locker room. He's a really bad micromanager, has a huge ego instead of having a lot of empathy. So don't become an Alec or an Alice.
Yep, I absolutely believe that, and it seems to be so easy to be that way, and I'm not sure why. You have thoughts on why is it easier to be a jerk boss than a good boss?
Because you don't know you're being one. In the work that I do now, Steve, I coach CEOs and C-level leaders, and my first part of my coaching progress is called awareness. I'm sure that a lot of leaders don't get up every morning, put their hand up and say, I'm going to be an Alec today. But they're not aware of the behavior or their behavior and how it impacts others. So in my coaching practice, what we do is we look at these behaviors and we say, maybe you are being a micromanager. Maybe you're not a good listener. Maybe you're running on the field. And then I talk to their stakeholders, the people they have the privilege to lead, and I ask them, is Steve a good listener? And they'd say, well, maybe not. And then we work with the leader and what we call intention in changing those behaviors. So I think the short answer to your question, I don't think a lot of leaders are aware of how their behavior impacts those they have the privilege to lead. Because in most cases, those they have the privilege to lead don't feel safe enough of going to their leader and saying, you know what, you don't listen to me. Or yes, I do.
So I'm smiling as you're talking about this because I spend a lot of time talking to C-suite leaders in our industry. And so often the conversation is, oh man, I'm so glad to be able to have a conversation with you. We've got so much stuff. You've got so much information. And then they talk about 85% of the time, and I hardly get a word in. And I think even when they're aware of it, it's so deeply ingrained, it's really hard to change the behavior. So,
It totally is, Steve. And that's why once I go through the first process of my coaching stuff, I have them every day ask themselves and grade themselves on a question. Did I do my best to be a better listener today? Did I do and then I meet with them every 2 weeks and we go through the spreadsheet, and it takes about 4 months. And finally, the intention of being a better listener actually goes into action and they actually become a better listener. So you have to be aware of it. Then you have to intentionally say, am I really trying to be better at this?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it is such a critical skill. So as I was getting ready for this, one of the things I saw referenced is that you use this physical gesture of let it go, but I couldn't actually figure out. I couldn't actually figure out. I couldn't find anything with a video of it. So the first thing is, show me what it looks like again. Awesome. And why is that important?
Well, a lot of people, and I got that from my dear friend, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. And, I've known Marshall for many years. He wrote a great book called Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's actually the platform of which I coach. But a lot of leaders think about, have I made the right decision? So there are two questions that I'd say you need to ask yourself. Did I do what I thought was right? And if the answer is yes, good. And then did I do my best? And the answer is yes. Then take a deep breath and make peace with it. Let it go. So, did I do what I thought was right? Did I do my best? Yes, yes. Let it go. Because if you carry it around, it will really, really not help you, in your leadership journey.
So what if I ask myself those questions and the answer to one or both of them is no?
Then you need to dive into why was it no? Is it because why wasn't it yes? And that's where you'll find the learning.
Cool. I love that. So you have something at WD-40 called the Maniac Pledge. Jada, can you put that up for us? So I'm going to actually read it out. Normally like to read things, but I'm responsible for taking action, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I'm responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. If I'm doing something others should know about, I'm responsible for telling them. Talk to me about how that came about, what problems it solved, what it does for the organization. And you can take it
Well,
back down, Jada.
this is what I would call a corporate vaccination against a disease that's running through organizations called the na disease. The na disease. It's the finger pointing disease. And how it came about many years ago, I was traveling around the world, I guess, and I got back to my office in San Diego, and someone couldn't wait to get into my office, and they weren't there to greet me or hug me. They were there to tell me how offended they were that there was something happened that they weren't informed about. And I said, well, wait a moment, you must know something about it, because if you knew nothing, you wouldn't be telling me there was something that you needed to know more about. And I said, have you been carrying that anger around in your backpack for a couple of weeks? And it was a learning moment for me, because I needed to take responsibility for that situation. And what became clear to me was we had to have a permission statement and a responsibility statement that says exactly what the Maniac Pledge says. If you think there's something you don't know about and you're aware of some part of that, go and find out about it. And more importantly, if you know something that someone else should know about, talk to them about it. So the Maniac Pledge was born, and it became our statement of responsibility and action that really empowered people to be curious, to be better communicators, and to not hide behind the the finger pointing disease.
So, have you ever been in a situation where you had a otherwise high performer who wouldn't buy into this, you had to say goodbye to? Did you have
You
trouble
know,
getting people to buy into this?
no, no, I don't. I think we all learned from it along the way. Um, but yes, WD-40 is a great company when I was there, and I'm sure it still is now. But it wasn't for everybody. We wanted to make sure that people were happy, and some people didn't like this open, clear, servant leadership based organization. They should be happy somewhere else, and that's okay.
Okay, good. So, you talk about yourself as the dean of dumbassery, which is the funniest thing in the world. I think that people would see me as pretty bold, but I'm not sure I'd be willing to do that. So I have great admiration for that. But it sort of also suggests that if you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong. Is that a fair statement?
No, as I shared with you at the beginning of our call, what dumbassery is a superpower. And it's really the superpower is understanding. When I was at WD-40 Company, I used to introduce myself like this, Steve. G'day, I'm Garry Ridge. I'm the consciously incompetent, probably wrong, and roughly right chairman and CEO of WD-40 Company, and I need all the help I can get. And that's really our role as a leader, is to create an environment where you are allowing the brilliance of others to fill the opportunities of the organization. So I think dumbassery, no, I know dumbassery is a superpower. And as I said, when I go back, it really does describe that, because like the donkey, it's not about showing off. It's about carrying the load, sticking with the journey, and helping others to get where they need to go, and being open about, we don't have all the answers. I never had all the answers, but I tell you what, with a group of great people, we could absolutely find the right answers.
This is because I'm a very curious person, and no matter how much I know, it just opens new avenues of things I don't know, which are fun to explore to get even smarter. And yet, I'm always surprised when I come across leaders who are sort of, I know it all, I'm the expert, and it puzzles me because my brain doesn't work that way. And is that changeable, or do you think that's just so deeply embedded that people can't change that?
Well, I think again it comes back to awareness. And if someone is a stubborn donkey, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think if let's look at the facts today in the United States, and there was some new data just came out for October. About 72% of people who go to work every day are disengaged or actively disengaged, which means they're not working positively towards achieving the purpose of the organization. Now, WD-40 Company, we had a 93% employee engagement. 98% of the people said they'd love to work at the company. 97% of people said they respected their coach. And it was those sort of numbers, having a high will of the people and a reasonable strategy, that created the results we got, which were not only financially rewarding, but we were making positive difference in people's lives. We wanted to be the organization that people escaped to, not escaped from. And I think that's what we achieved, and that's why I do what I do today. My purpose now is I help leaders build cultures of belonging, where love, forgiveness, and learning inspire a happier, more connected world, because we need a more happier, connected world, and business has an opportunity and a responsibility to make a positive difference on that if we create cultures that we've talked about today, where people belong, they matter, they feel safe, they learn, and they're coached.
So I nominate Garry Ridge to go run a senior living organization like Brookdale and make that happen. We have such high turnover, such low job satisfaction in our industry, and we talk about how hard it is to recruit and retain staff members. And we're competing for the same people that work at Starbucks, McDonald's, Taco Bell, And I step back and I look at it and I go, we should be the ones who do not have staffing crisis. We should be the organization where everybody wants to go to work because they'll get a paycheck and they'll get that second paycheck of changing people's lives. And it should be Starbucks and McDonald's and Taco Bell that struggle to find workers, not us. And yet that doesn't seem to be true. How do we fix that?
Well, the fish rots from the head, Steve. So, it's leadership creating these cultures. And one of the things that I know for sure is most organizations that have low employee engagement have high cost of employment, because you can pay people to hate what they're doing, but they won't stay for very long.
Yeah, that is a quotable quote. Garry, we are out of time. This has been an amazing conversation. How do people find you? How do they get your book? How do they book you if they want to have you come speak?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. Pretty easy. There's the link at the bottom of the page there. My website is www.thelearningmoment.net. And in fact, I challenge those listening to us today, if they go to my website and go to the drop down, there is the dumbass quiz. Take the dumbass quiz. You will get a dumbassery score from me. The higher the score, the more chance you have of building a great culture. The lower the score, the more challenging you're going to have. Take the quiz. I'll send you a playbook. And if you want my book, you can go get it on Amazon.
Terrific. One more question for you. I think I saw something on LinkedIn a week or 10 days ago that you've got something you're cooking up with Simon Sinek. Is that something you can talk about?
Simon and I have been friends for 14 to 15 years. We did some work a little while ago, and it'll drop out in January. So watch out for that. You'll find it on social media in January.
Terrific. Well, I'm a little bit in a high stage for Foresight TV. I have been looking forward to having you as a guest, particularly since your book came out. I'm not quite all the way done with it. I'm about halfway through. Probably finished it on the airplane tour from Boston this weekend, and then next week I've got Guy Kawasaki coming on, and you ought to be on his podcast, by the way. So. Okay. Because you are a remarkable person. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you so much for watching. If you're at Leading Age in Boston next week, I hope we get a chance to connect. Maybe we can even do a little interview. And otherwise, have a great, great weekend.
Thank you very much.